What's the best way to hand off your designs to your developers? Well, in most cases, it's no handoff whatsoever. I'm sure we've all been there. You spend hours and hours perfecting your design, adding every last detail down to the pixel, and you're finally happy with it, and it's ready to be handed over. What happens next? You send your developer a link to the Figma file and tell them it's ready to be built. So what's the problem? 1 week passes by, and your developer messages you to tell you the front-end build is ready, and sends you a link to check out. Your excitement soon fades as you realize things aren't quite as you expected. The button padding seems inconsistent. The font weight just feels too heavy in the browser. And those subtle animations you had in mind between screens, they just feel off. This isn't the developer's fault. Let's take a minute to talk about collaboration. This is one of the most important skills you can have in your back pocket as a designer when working on a team to create a product or website. The cornerstone to collaboration is effective communication. Without it, things are bound to get lost in translation, and you could ultimately waste time and effort trying to perfect a design during build and wasting weeks at a time. Collaboration works both ways, so it's important to remember that if the designs haven't been built to the required level of detail, this is well within your control. And if this happens, I'd recommend reviewing how often you check in with your developers. There's a full video available with tips on collaborating with your team. I'll link that on screen now. Go and check it out for more tips on how to progress in this area. So getting back to developer handoff, what's the solution here? I've often said that the best handoff is no handoff at all. What do I mean by this? Well, your goal when sharing design updates should be to eliminate any surprises your developers might face. So try sharing your designs early and often so you can talk about any concerns or limitations well in advance of the designs being built. In practice, this can be a difficult thing to start doing, right? Sharing our work before we're truly happy with it, or if we're even sure it's the right direction to take, it can be a daunting thought at first. But the truth is, when you share with your team, you'll actually get more feedback and insights that will help you make smarter decisions, especially on how feasible your ideas are to implement. Remember, the more information you can gather, the more informed you'll be on the right direction to take. Getting comfortable bringing others into your design process is something you can try out with the people you work closest with. Then, as your confidence grows and you can see the benefits of doing so, you can extend this process out to the wider team. Over time, you'll start to actually build a reputation of somebody who's an open, collaborative designer, as well as gaining important feedback early on that will help to shape your designs. So you've shared your design solutions early. The developers you're working with have had early exposure to your ideas, and they're happy with how feasible the project is. So what happens when the time comes to building out the UI? One of the things that I've found most effective with the teams that I've worked with is to set up a kickoff session where we can walk through each part of the design step by step. This has a number of benefits. Firstly, it allows everyone working on the product to gain exposure to the requirements, the proposed direction, and the design solution, all in a unified way. As you step through the designs, it's a good idea to mention the reasons behind each decision, backing them up with research insights, so you can show that every element on screen has a reason for being there. This not only shows credibility, but it also promotes the need for implementation to match the design as closely as possible. Secondly, by running this session in real time, you're giving people an equal opportunity to voice their opinions and thoughts and allowing you to reply in the moment. This will most likely help many people across your team who are thinking the same. This is potentially a huge time saving in the long run. And thirdly, it acts as a great kickoff point to commence the build. Make sure you sync up and align with the product owner or whoever it is that's managing that project ahead of time. So once your team is fully clued up on what needs implementing, and understand the design decisions that you've made, it's time to make sure your design files are in order and ready for build. The way you do this all depends on the project that you're working on, if there is a design system already in place, if the developers are already comfortable with the components you're using, and many other factors that may be specific to your own setup. Now, I'll be using Figma for the following examples, but most design tools will allow for a similar approach. In any case, I like to make sure there is a clear separation between the work in progress and the UI and the flows that are ready to be built. Again, communication is key here to ensure that the developers are referencing the right material. The most effective way that I've found to do this is to reserve the first page in the list of designs for those that are ready for dev. This should be the first thing the developers see when opening the file. Easy access is key. From here, we can use the section tool to place our designs into a global area that can be marked as ready for handover, to add that extra level of confirmation, giving the rest of the team the green light. As for additional touches, I like to give as much context as possible to those who are referencing the designs. This typically comes in the form of framing, notes, and annotations. Let's start with framing. By adding a clear title bar and providing some visual grouping, we're able to give immediate context to the designs that follow. Including a heading and a short description will help give your team that initial understanding of what problem the UI is addressing. Next up, I'll add a section directly below the UI dedicated to notes. Oftentimes, there will be some extra details that will help towards building a design in the intended way. I found that by adding footnotes in this way helps add guidance without the need for developers to leave the context of the UI they are referencing. When adding notes, it can be helpful to everyone if you set the expectation upfront that these will be included, as they can help complement and clarify any acceptance criteria set within user stories or tickets that are used to track the work that is produced. Finally, let's look at annotations. The way I see it, annotations differ from global notes as they can be hyper-specific to a single area of the UI. One use case I've found these to be super helpful is when there's been a small change to the design that is crucial to a great user experience. Instead of adding a new flow entirely for this change, calling it out with the use of an annotation reduces unnecessary duplication. It should also keep people from leaving the wider context of the flow, while at the same time getting granular guidance on the latest updates. Even with all of these things in place, it's important not to lose sight that continuous communication is going to provide the best results. There is no substitute for a good conversation. Together, let's remove the idea that developer handoff is just throwing designs over a fence, crossing our fingers, and hoping they're built in the way that we expect. Communicate, collaborate, and create the best experience possible as a team. I hope this video serves you, and I'll see you in the next one.